Frank Giles, editor-in-chief of AgNet Media, and I'm joined by Sarah Strauss, who is based at the Southwest Florida Research and Education Center in Immokalee. Welcome, Sarah.
Nice to be here.
Great. Well, you were kind enough to provide a sidebar for a story that ran in our June issue of Specialty Crop Grower magazine that focused on cover crops. And you kind of gave us your list of your five favorite cover crops. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we jump in, just tell us a little bit about what you do there at the center in Immokalee and some of the focus of your research.
Sure. So I am an associate professor of soil microbiology. I'm in the Department of Soil, Water, and Ecosystem Sciences and located at the SWFREC. And my research really focuses on the interactions between soil microorganisms and crops, with the goal of trying to use those interactions to enhance crop production. And so we look at that in a variety of ways. And manipulating those soil microorganisms through the use of things like cover crops is one angle that we focus on.
Right. And speaking of cover crops, just talk a little bit in generally about how they've been adopted by specialty crop growers, citrus growers in Florida and beyond, if you care to. I know in the Plant City area where there's a lot of strawberries grown, I even mentioned that in the article. You've really seen a big adoption of sun hemp in the last probably 5 years ago. So just talk a little bit about the adoption of cover crops in vegetable and citrus.
Sure. So cover crops are not new. Farmers have been using them for, almost as long as we've been doing agriculture. And there's certainly been a resurgence of interest in their use in a variety of crops. A lot of the research has been done on row crops, and so cotton, corn, soybeans, but there is also a lot of increased interest in specialty crops, as you mentioned. And in Florida, uh, certainly, there are some additional challenges as far as timing and planting that we have to deal with that some areas in the, say, Midwest might not have to. But the benefits can still be very, very good. And so there's definitely a lot of growers that are implementing these. So you mentioned some of the stuff in Plant City. I know of several commercial tomato growers that are using cover crops and sun hemp in particular. And I know there's been adoption within the citrus industry as well. And we've been doing research with both citrus and tomato on looking at the role and the impact of cover crops. In my case, specifically on the soil microbiome, but also for all of the other benefits that they can provide too.
Great. And speaking of benefits, for the benefit of growers who may not be aware of cover crops or really just haven't been paying attention to that, tell us a little bit about some of the benefits that are derived from cover crops, and especially in your area of expertise.
Sure. So cover crops are for the basically crops that are grown for the purpose of soil health. They're not grown for harvest or for sales. They are grown to enhance and improve soil health. And so that includes building organic matter, putting in more carbon into the soil. That involves um, building, making sure that there is something, i.e., a plant holding that soil down so it's not washing away or blowing away. But that process of providing carbon uh, is really beneficial, particularly for my area for microbes, because that provides resources for soil microorganisms. And so our soils, as we all know, are very sandy, and that means they're also very low in carbon and low in those resources for soil microorganisms. So this practice really can enhance that availability of resources for microbes, increase their activity, increase the different types that might be present in your soil that could have some potential benefits for your crop production. In addition, having more soil carbon also changes some of the soil properties and can retain more water for your soils, more nutrients, things like that, which also obviously can have great benefits for crop production.
Great. And, row crops are relatively easy in terms of growers adopting these practices. How are there any obstacles for specialty crop growers that are different than row crops that you care to mention?
Sure. So citrus, of course, is very different, given that, in both vegetable and in row crops, the idea is that you plant the cover crop during the fallow period and you clear your field and then you plant your cover crop. Obviously, you're not getting rid of your cash crop in citrus. And so then we're planting cover crops in the row middles. And so that's can be a challenge all by itself. But the benefit is, here in Florida, you can grow cover crops year round in your citrus groves. And so there certainly are some challenges in getting that established. But again, I know commercial growers that have been successful, and we've had a number of trials where we've seen some really good results with that, planting those in the row middles and keeping a cover crop variety or multiple varieties going year round. For vegetable crops, again, the challenge is that fallow period, particularly because for us in Florida, that fallow period is generally in the summer when it's super rainy and hot. And so that certainly can be logistically challenging. And so then again, getting the timing of when you get your crop in the ground is really important. And then also making sure that you're terminating it early enough so that you can make sure that it is basically chopped up and tilled into your soil in advance of when you need to prepare your beds. And so that's again some timing logistics that can be a little tricky to get used to initially. But again, we're seeing plenty of commercial growers that are adopting this practice and seeing again good results that make it for them at least worthwhile to continue.
Excellent. And in the story, you kind of singled out five of cover crops that you like,
Mhm.
but you did emphasize the point of mixing it up a little bit and the benefits of doing that. Talk a little bit about why diversifying the mix of cover crops are important.
So yes, I should mention that planting any cover crop, monoculture, single cover crop, or a mixture is, I think, probably better than not doing one. So there are certainly pros and cons to doing mixtures, and I know of a lot of commercial growers that are having great success planting a single cover crop, often just sun hemp. But planting mixtures can, in some cases, provide additional benefits because each of those different cover crops is providing different resources for those soil microorganisms. And so you're attracting different microorganism communities based on some of those plant types. And so when you have multiple, a mixture of, say, legumes that fix nitrogen and non-legumes like grasses and things like that are not fixing nitrogen, sometimes that can actually enhance the amount of nitrogen that's being fixed by those legumes. There's some competition going on and increased demand. And again, like I mentioned, different resources are being provided. And so the type of material that is coming from the roots can impact soil microorganisms, as well as the actual plant material when it's decomposing can provide different resources for those microorganisms. And so having that diversity can just boost things a little bit more. But again, if you can only manage to do one, that's still good.
That's right. I think that's one of the reasons you picked sun hemp was because, it does do well in these challenging conditions in the summer for Florida. So that was one of your choices, right?
Yes, sun hemp does very, very well here in Florida. And again, it is a legume, it fixes nitrogen, so it's got both of those benefits. And certainly, as some folks are probably aware, it can get very tall here in Florida in the summer. We've definitely had plants that are, you know, 6 feet high in some places, and so um, that can be a sight to see.
Absolutely. So cover crops is something that growers should definitely consider and give a look. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that covers it, but
Well,
I'm
with that,
always happy to answer questions.
absolutely. Well, with that, we'll let you go and thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.